Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back on another Bible study. Today we're going to be diving back into Numbers, and today, especially, I need to say this. If you are looking for a conventional Bible study, this is probably not the place for you. I'm doing something slightly unconventional here. I'm just reading the Bible without the lens that there is a chosen people or that there is a deliverer, like Jesus is a divine being, right? We've gone through the reasons for that prior to this, but I want to point that out again today because today we're definitely going to be getting into some controversial topics. We are going to vary wildly into the land of speculation, and if you are uncomfortable with that, this is not going to be the place for you. If, however, you have an open mind, and if, however, you would like to see a slightly different interpretation than you have seen, then let's talk about it. We will be diving in today into Numbers 13 because we left off in Numbers 12. In Numbers 12, we had a dispute among the leadership. That was quite an interesting thing to dig into. But today we're going to be looking at finally the land that will become Israel. We are looking at finally they are starting to reach the destination. They have come from Egypt. They crossed the sea. They came through Midian. They wandered in the desert of Sin for a little while. They got the law from Sinai and they wandered up to Paran. We're going to be in Paran now. Now, we talked in the last one how it's chronologically it jumps around a little bit, right? We were before we were with the Midianites, and now we are after we are with the Midianites. And this is, well, let's look at the geography because that is one of the things that we do here, right? Here is the land in question, right? Where we are now is right here. Well, we were right here. This is Midian. This is where Moses' father-in-law lived, right? It was in this area. Now, he also took a wife from the Cushites, and that caused some contention, and that's over here in the south of Egypt, in North Sudan. We talked about why I don't believe that Sinai is here, but rather that Sinai is over here, close to his uncle, and Jebel el-Oz, just to the south, I believe is where the law was done. There is no way to prove that. There will be no way to prove that until we get there, and I'm okay with that. That is my belief. But if that offends you, if you think, nope, it absolutely has to be Sinai right here, this, again, is not going to be the Bible study for you. I say this not because I don't want you here, and not because I don't want you to be able to learn, but because a lot of people have some very closed minds when it comes to the issues that we talk about in these things. And I'm okay with being different. I'm okay with being called names. Please be respectful in the comments to each other. I don't block people unless I absolutely have to. So, we have wandered from here where we received the law. We were camped out here in the desert of Sin, Sinai. The desert of Sinai, desert of Sin, same thing. And we going up to the desert of Paran, which I believe is right here. We do not have a clear, definite, this is the place. There is a lot of contention about where it might be, but not a definite. So we are again in the land of speculation. But it makes sense to me because this area just to the east of the Dead Sea was the Moabites. Above them was the Ammonites. The Amalekites are up in here and all of that. But this area here is a good sized desert. There is not a whole lot of population out here. So I believe that they were able to hide this many people in the desert. I mean, you cannot hide 3 million people. But if there's nobody around to see you, you're not really hidden, you're just not really seen. And so where we are right now, I believe, is right here. Now, this is the Negev, this area right here in the middle. Over here is Canaan, along the coast and across the top. And then you have the hill areas right here. We will talk more about these places as we go along, but the hills go all the way around this way. This is the Jordan River. It connects. I'm drawing a blank as to what this is. The Sea of Galilee with the Dead Sea. It also comes into the Sea of Galilee, but the areas that we're mainly talking about now is between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. To the east is the Ammonites in the north and the Moabites towards the south. The Canaanites are along the east coast and above the top of this mountain range over to the Sea of Galilee. And there's various other tribes in these mountains. All right, let's get to the text. The spies explore Canaan. We are in Numbers 13. And the Lord said to Moses, send out for yourselves men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each of their fathers' tribes, send one man who is a leader among them. So, at the consent of the Lord, Moses sent them out from the wilderness of Paran. All the men were leaders of Israelites, and these were their names. From the tribe of Reuben, Shammua, son of Zakur. I will probably murder the names. It is not intentional. I mean no offense. From the tribe of Simeon, Shaphat, son of Hori. From the tribe of Judah, Caleb, son of Jephunneh. From the tribe of Issachar, Eagle, son of Joseph. From the tribe of Ephraim, Hosea, son of Nun. From the tribe of Benjamin, Palti, son of Raphu. From the tribe of Zebulun, Gadiel, son of Sodi. From the tribe of Manasseh, a tribe of Joseph, Gadi, son of Susi. From the tribe of Dan, Amiel, son of Gamali. From the tribe of Asher, Setor, son of Michael. From the tribe of Naphtali, Nabi, son of Vosphi. And from the tribe of Gad, Gul, son of Machi. That's interesting. Hold on. I want to look at something real quick. Where is... These were the names of the men Moses sent out to spy out the land, and Moses gave to Hosea, son of Nun, the name Yeshua. Okay, so that's interesting. I missed that before. So he gave to Hosea the name Yeshua. That's significant to the Christians, right? Hosea. Let's go ahead and pop out names. Let's go ahead and look at this. This is why we do Biblehood, so that when something strikes us and we find something new, we can look at it, right? Let's look at this. Hosea, son of Nun. So we're going to pop out Hosea, and we've already looked at Yeshua, but we'll go ahead and look at that again. Hosea means salvation. Yehoshua, the Lord is salvation. Moses is successor, and also a number of Israel. This is also Jesus. Jesus and Yeshua are the same. Joshua and Yeshua are the same. That's Yeshua is Joshua and Jesus. And so it is interesting to note that that is right here, right? These were the names the men gave to spy out the land. This is who is going to see things. And Moses gave to Hosea salvation, the son of Nun. I didn't look up Nun. Let's look up Nun. What was Nun's meaning right there? Father of Joshua. That's it. Okay, so the only thing, Nun is, the only thing we have on him is everybody else's name has a meaning, but his is just Nun. And when Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, he told them, go up through the Negev and into the hill country. See what the land is like and whether its people are strong or weak, few or many. Is the land where they live good or bad? Are the lands where they dwell open camps or fortifications? Is the soil fertile or unproductive? Are there trees in it or not? Be courageous and bring back some of the fruit of the land. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to close these tabs out so I don't get confused. And we're going to look at it specifically where we're talking about now. So he's telling them to leave Paran and go into the Negev, right? No, this is Paran, where I think Paran is. And the Negev is this desert region south of the Dead Sea. It kind of triangles out like this. It doesn't quite go down to Petra, which is right down here. I don't see it. But it's this area right here. Now, Israel's doing a great job now of making the Negev come to life, but it was very much a desert. Like this desalinization plant, that wasn't there back then, at least not to the scale that it is now. And so This was mostly desert, but they had people that lived here, and because there is readily available water from like the rivers are emptying from here north. That's a little bit weird for people on the North American continent because they're used to the river flowing pretty much north to south. But it's like the continental divide where this high point goes this way and this high point goes this way. So the high point of this river is coming to the south, but the high point of this river is going to the north. And the reason that there's so much salt accumulated here is it's all the runoff salt from all of the accumulated years, or it could be something to do with Sodom. But the evaporation doesn't take the salt with it, so it accumulates and it gets really condensed. That's why they're desalinating and selling that off in various places. But he's telling them to go across into the hill country. So that is actually up here by Hebron. Hebron is significant. We will talk about Hebron in a little while. This is the contested area in the modern times, right? You have this area is one of the, you have this one is very big in the news right now. This area right here, that starts with the G, that is very big in the news right now. We are not talking about current events at all, YouTube. But this is also one of the contested areas. Like the actual control of the land has a land bridge that goes through here, and Israel controls like this. It's very complicated. How they broke apart the state doesn't really concern me. But Hebron is important, and we will come back to it in a little bit. But it is very much situated in the hill country that we're talking about. And when Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, he's told them to go up through the Negev and into the hill country and see what the land is like. So they went out and spied out the land from the wilderness of Zin as far as Rehob towards Lebo Hamath. And then they went up through the Negev and came to Hebron, where Ammon, Seshai, and Talmai, descendants of Anak, dwelled. It had been built 7 years before Zon in Egypt. And here is where we will definitely step on some toes. Because here we are talking about something, wild conspiracy, much speculation, the Annunaki. The Anak and the Annunaki, I believe, are the same. We're going to get back to that here in just a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and read through the rest of this text, and then we will go back to the map. And when they came to the valley of Eshcol, they cut down a branch with a single cluster of grapes, which they carried on a pole between 2 men. They also took some pomegranates and figs. Because the cluster of grapes the Israelites cut there, that place was called the Valley of Eshcol. The reports of the spies. And after 40 days, the men returned from spying out the land. They went back to Moses, Aaron, and the whole congregation of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back a report for the whole congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave account to Moses. We went into the land to which you sent us, and indeed, it is flowing with milk and honey. Here is some of its fruit. Nevertheless, the people living in the land are strong, and the cities are large and fortified. We even saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the land of the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live by the sea and along the Jordan. We talked about those lines right now. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites, we'll get into more when we get into the actual conquering of the land as to where they are, but they're in the hill country that goes up from Hebron up around to the Sea of Galilee. And then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, we must go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly conquer it. But the men who had gone up with him replied, we cannot go up against the people, for they are stronger than we are. So they gave the Israelites a bad report about the land that they had spied out. The land we explored devours its inhabitants, and all the people we saw there are great in stature. We even saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak, that have come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own sight, and we must have seen the same to them. And now we're going to enter the wild land of speculation, because I like a good conspiracy. I really like when I see it confirmed, right? This is a historical book. There are errors in the application of the things, right? There are errors in the way that the laws are handled. There are ways that I personally cannot justify God telling somebody, do this thing. Right? We've talked about that several times. We're not going to dive into specific things. The reason for the flood was because the land had become polluted, right? The Nephilim had mated with the sons of man, or the sons of God mated with the daughters of men, and they produced creatures. Some of these creatures were giants. They were the pregnant the ancestors of Goliath and his brothers. And so the people who are living in Hebron, particularly, are the sons of those. They said that they saw people that they seemed like grasshoppers in their sight. And that the violent land consumed, right? Well, do you think that the land was eating anyone? Do you think the land was eating anyone? No. It wasn't the land. It was these creatures. Now, they have fruit too. They were omnivores, right? They had fruit so big that they picked a cluster of grapes that they had to carry on a pole between two people. Now, I take this a different way than a lot of scholars do. Like most biblical scholars were being like, well, they just meant that they were well fortified and that it was well fertile fruits. I take it to mean what it said, right? It said that there were giants living there and that the fruit that they had was gigantic. We don't get a description on the size of the pomegranates that they bring back and the other crops, but it is fair to assume that that is probably comparable. Now, they went through the Negev, into the hill country, all the way up to check out the land of the Canaanites, right? So they spent 40 days here, and on their way back out, they stopped and picked this up before they came back through the desert. Like, they're not going to carry a cluster of grapes up into the hill country and back down. So we get a little bit of timing on when that happened. But they go back to the people, and they're like, bro, we ain't going to be able to do this. This is 600,000 fighting men. Now, again, we're going to think about that number for a minute because that's so big. Like, so big. The size of this entire encampment, right? We've talked about it, is like the third largest city in the United States is a comparable size to these people that are in the desert. Right? I think it was Dallas we looked at that it was comparable to the size of Dallas. We're talking about that many people in the desert, and the fighting force of that is more than several state capitals. It's more than it's more than some states have altogether. In fighting men they're lean, right? They're dedicated to the service of. They're under arms to be conquerors. And they got an army of 600,000. And these scouts are like, nah, bro, we can't mess with that. So, to me, this is proof of a further history that we don't know about. And then we get a little bit more in the text. And so, where exactly was it? I'm looking for the reference to Egypt. The descendants of Anak, right there. Saw the Nephilim. I know it's in here, so. And he told him, go to. And they gave this account to Moses. We went into the land on which you sent us, and indeed it is flowing. Here's some of the fruit. Nevertheless, the people are large and strong. The cities are large and fortified. Now, we're also talking about the land of, like, everybody's familiar with Jericho and the walls of Jericho. Jericho is above the Dead Sea and below the Sea of Galilee. So it is like just to the west of the Jordan. Uh, and so like that was a great walled city. There were more walled cities in the area. They had to defend against giants. Maybe we haven't gotten there yet. Hold on. No, we've definitely gotten there. Anyways, I can't find the reference now, but it's talking about the city that was built. Maybe we haven't. Let me go ahead. I'll go through and we'll make sure we haven't. But I will come back to Egypt. So hold on. Israel's rebellion. Let me get a sip here. And then the whole congregation lifted up their voices and cried out. And that night the people wept. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt. If only we had died in this wilderness. Why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and children will become plunder. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? So they said to one another, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. And then Moses and Aaron fell face down before the whole assembly to the congregation of Israel. Yeshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes, and said to the whole of the congregation of Israel, the land we passed through and explored is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, he will bring us into this land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and he will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, for they will be like bread for us. Their protection has been removed, and the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. But the whole congregation threatened to stone Joshua and Caleb. And then the glory of the Lord appeared to all the Israelites at the tent of meeting, and the Lord said to Moses, How long will this people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, despite all the signs I had performed among them? I will strike them with a plague and destroy them, and I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they are. I agree, right? How is it that these people have come through Egypt, have come through the desert, have been led by fire and smoke, who saw that pillar of fire delay the Egyptians while they crossed the river, the Red Sea, who have seen the provision, who have been guided by this, who have seen people struck down by this fire? How could they doubt? We've talked about that, right? Now, I believe that Moses has control of a device, that there is some kind of a technology that would be so far advanced to what they know that it would be magic. It is so far advanced to us that it would be magic to us, but he has something that came from these Anakim, right? From the land of the Anak, and that's why it's so important for him to get this spot. That's why it's so important for there are energetic forces that are very real in the world. People call them ley lines, right? And there are points of concentration of those ley lines. And it just so happens that Israel is in one of those spots. Egypt is in another one of those spots. Now, I can't find the reference. I know it's in here. I think I already read it, but I read through this 2 or 3 times most of the time before we talk about it, just to make sure I've got it right in my head. So it might be ahead of me, and I don't want to get into it if it's ahead of me. But all right, so if only we had died in Egypt. If we had died, our children wouldn't become plunder. Let's go back. Would it not be better for us to go back to Egypt? And then Yeshua, who had his name changed from salvation to salvation, and Caleb are among those who spot out the land, and they tear their clothes, and they're like, no, you're sinning against God. Now, I think that this part is a little hyperbolic, probably, right? Now, people are very, very zealous in their religions. You can see the evidence of that playing out in current events. And so it is definitely possible that they were saying this. I just find it hard to believe that they wouldn't be able to trust God to do it if they were getting what we have seen. If you have seen the miracles, then how do you doubt? Like, how do you continue to have doubt? Now, we've seen evidence that this God is capricious. We have seen evidence that this God is malicious. We have seen that he holds grudges. He's not a nice God, right? This is a God of do right or I will punish you. Now, we also seen that that's not true. Right? We saw that when we did Job. That's why we jumped ahead and did Job, so that we could see that according to God, that's not true. According to the one he called righteous, that's not true. According to the book of Job, it is not true that God punishes you. You can receive blessings for being obedient, but you don't get the bad things don't happen because God wants to punish you for not listening. Right? That was the whole point of Job. Yet here, this is all if you don't do what I tell you to do to the T. I'm going to refuse you. I have made covenant with your great-grandfather to a land that I did not give to him. I made a covenant with your grandfather with a land that I did not give to him. I gave a covenant with your fathers for a land, and I did not give it to him. And I made a covenant with you that if you follow me out of Egypt and through the wilderness, I will give you this set of laws, and I will bring you into this land that you will not have to fight. The people who are in this land will run from you in fear. That was the promise that was given. And we see again that God is going to break his covenant. Again. You can say what you want about Israel broke their covenant by not being faithful. Their covenant was that if they followed God into this place, then this place would be available to them, that there would be no resistance, that they would go and just take possession of the land. That was their expectation. And once again, when their expectation isn't met in the way that they think it might be, and you can make the argument that they didn't have the right to expect it to go a certain way, but once again, we see that when the people don't react in the way that God thinks they do, he gets angry. And he rages and he throws a fit. And he's like, you know what, I'll just wipe out this whole people. Well, if you are going to do that, like you're omniscient, you know that they're going to do this. Why bring them out of Egypt in the beginning? It's the consistency errors, right? But the glory of the Lord appears to the Israelites now. Aaron and Moses work in concert. There is a manipulation device built into Aaron's robes. And if you see these people, like the spies come back, and they don't have good news, right? They're like, yeah, bro, I don't know if we can do it. They got some really strong cities and some really big people. And everybody's like, oh, well, I thought this was going to be a little bit easier. And in order to get control of that situation, the people who have control of the device use the device to get control of the people. If you don't see that, I don't know what to tell you. Yes, I know that is not a normal thought. Right? I look at this as though they were establishing a religion. And in order to have a religion, you have to have a control. Right? And so they were keeping control in the way that they were given to keep control. This device that lifts the fire and shoots it where they want it. That is how they did it. That is what it is telling you is happening here. And they can say what they want about the voice of God came down and told them. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people treat me with contempt? Does God not know that? How long will they refuse to believe in me, despite all the signs I have performed among them? Did he not know that when they left Egypt? And if so, why would you do it? Like it doesn't make sense to say, well, that's just so he could lead them back into the wilderness and then pull them out. Well, we're going to get into that too. They don't go into the wilderness. They have already done their wandering. Now they're going to conquesting because they have an army of 600,000 men. And the land that they thought they were going to get was the land of Hebron all the way over. from the river to the sea. That's what they thought that they were getting. They thought that all the people that inhabited this land would just flee from them, and that they would take possession of the entirety of this area right here, all the way up almost to Damascus. Right? This is their land that they are being given with no resistance. This is their ancestral homeland that they were never ancestors in. It has always belonged to someone else, but it was their homeland that the Lord gave to them. But they go and they take it. It is through conquest, and you can talk about that being colonization and all of that, but that is the history of humanity. That land right there looks really nice, and I don't have any land. I'm going to go take that land if I can. That is the history of humanity. Humanity is war and strife. The fact that we live in relative peace now, as wild as you may think it is not nearly as wild as it used to be. And the fact that we live in relative civilization is because of the groundwork laid in this book. But this book is not the end of the groundwork, right? You build a good base, and then you have to build more. And that's where the New Testament came in. We will talk more about that when we get into it. But So now he's going to strike them with a plague and destroy them. But Moses said to the Lord, well, then the Egyptians will hear about it, for by your strength you brought these people out from among them, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. You have already heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people, and that you, O Lord, have been seen face to face, that your cloud stands over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of night by fire by night. If you kill this people as one man, the nations who have heard of your fame will say, because the Lord was unable to bring this people into the land he swore to give them, he has slaughtered them in the wilderness. So now I pray, may the power of my Lord be magnified, just as you have declared. The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in loving devotion, forgiving iniquity and transgression. He will by no means leave the guilty unpunished. He will visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people in keeping with the greatness of your loving devotion, just as you have forgiven them ever since they left Egypt. Now, there's a whole lot in here, right? So Moses has to inform God. They got to talk him down off the ledge, right? Because God has made up his mind that he's going to wipe his people out. And Moses is like, oh, hold up, bro, hold up. If you do that, then these people are going to make fun of you. And that's a valid argument. Like, Egypt's already, right, seen enough to convince them. Right? They've already suffered through the plagues and the loss of all of their fighting men. Their firstborn children were already gone, and then they took a whole army into the desert and died underwater. They've seen enough. They don't give a shit. Oops, somebody just got big mad. But he has to remind them, hey, if you do this, then the Egyptians are going to see it, and they're going to think bad of you. Like, I mean, you led them out of the desert. You led them out of Egypt, out of slavery, across the river, through the desert, and over here. Right? And you're slow to anger. So now I pray, may the power of the Lord be magnified. So let me feed your ego. The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in loving devotion, forgiving iniquity and transgression. Excuse me, what book have you been reading? I haven't read that at all. What I've read is that this God condemns you from birth. And if you're not redeemed through sacrificing the blood of another animal, you're still condemned. Regardless of whether you live a pure life or not. You could be absolutely pure from the moment of your conception to the moment of your death. And if somebody doesn't sacrifice an animal in the right way to the right people on your behalf, you are condemned to damnation. That is where we are. But they don't believe in hell. Right? They have Sheol, which is an afterlife, but it is not heaven and hell. Right? It's a concept beyond that they have. There is no real separation in the beyond of what's good and bad. So your punishment is going to be here. But this God is slow to anger, even though they're concerned. They are human, right? You created these fallible people, but you are surprised that they are fallible. You created these people to be who they are. You count the hairs on their head. You know them before they're born, when they are knitted in their mother's womb. You know them and hold them and have their destiny planned out, but you didn't know that they would be upset to find out that there was giants in this land that they thought they were going to get. Do you see the levels of narcissism that's built into this? Because narcissism depends on you not being able to question. If you cannot question, then you cannot find out that they're not telling you all the truth. Now, there are great big chunks of truth in this. And then there are great big chunks of not in this too. And the way that they keep you is because the great big chunks of true are indisputably true. But the things that they tell you that are wrong are value judgments. Right? Let's get into some values. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people, in keeping with the greatness of your loving devotion, just as you have forgiven them ever since they left Egypt. And so it is done. There is no sacrifice. Right? I have pardoned them as you requested, the Lord replied. Yet as surely as I live, and as surely as the whole earth is filled with the glory of the Lord, not one of the men who have seen my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, yet have tested me and disobeyed me these 10 times. Now, we didn't get into the enumeration of the 10 disobedience, right? Not one will ever see the land that I swore to give to their fathers. Not one of those who have treated me with contempt will see it. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and has followed me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he has entered, and his descendants will inherit it. Now, since the Amalekites and Canaanites are living in the valleys, turn back tomorrow and head for the wilderness along the route to the Red Sea. And then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, how long will this wicked congregation grumble against me? I have heard the complaints that the Israelites are making against me. So tell them, as surely as I live, declares the Lord, I will do exactly as I heard you say. Your bodies will fall in this wilderness. All who were numbered in the census, everyone 20 years of age or older, because you have grumbled against me. Surely none of you will enter the land in which I swore to settle you, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Yeshua, son of Nun. Now this is not the same as this. Right? In this, it's just Caleb. And down here, we remember Yeshua. But I will bring your children, whom you said you would plunder, into the land you have rejected, and they will enjoy it. As for you, however, your bodies will fall in this wilderness. Your children will be shepherds in the wilderness for 40 years, and they will suffer for your unfaithfulness until the last of your bodies lies in the wilderness. In keeping with the 40 days you spied out the land, you shall bear your guilt for 40 years, a year for each day, and you will experience my alienation. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will surely do these things to the entire wicked congregation which has conspired against me. They will meet their end in the wilderness, and there they will die. The plague on the 10 spies. And so the men Moses had sent to spy out the land, who had returned and made the whole congregation grumble against him by bringing out a bad report about the land. Those men who had brought out the bad report about the land were struck down by a plague before the Lord. Of those men who had gone out to spy out the land, only Yeshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, remained alive. And when Moses relayed those words to the Israelites, the people mourned bitterly. So they have been told, return to the desert of sin. Right? They have come from the Red Sea down here. Like, this desert is where I believe that they were at. I believe that this is the desert of Paran, where they went for their scouting trip. They camped here and sent their scouts out into the various places. And they're being told to go back into the wilderness towards the Red Sea. They can't return to the land Midianites, right? They have to come down here. We will get more into the wilderness. I don't think that's going to be the next one, but the one following, probably. But let's talk about the defeat at Hamorah before we wrap this one up. We might actually get into 15 too. Hold on. Yeah, we'll probably do that and get it out of the way. And early the next morning they got up and went up towards the ridge of the hill country. We have indeed sinned, they said, but we will go to the place the Lord has promised. But Moses said, why are you transgressing the commandment of the Lord? This will not succeed. Do not go up, lest you be struck down by your enemies, because the Lord is not among you. For there the Amalekites and Canaanites will face you, and you will fall by the sword. Because you have turned away from the Lord, he will not be with you. But they dared to go up to the ridge of the hill country, though neither Moses nor the ark of the covenant moved from the camp. And then the Amalekites and Canaanites, who lived in that part of the hill country, came down, attacked them, and routed them all the way to Hamorah. So, they attempted to enter the land after they were told to go back in this area over here, right? So, it's going to be the Canaanites and the Amalekites in this area around Hebron. They were trying to take the land of Hebron. It didn't work. Yeah, there's Jericho right there. All right, we're going to run through 15 pretty quick because we're definitely going to get into 15. And then we'll go back to Egypt for the wrap-up. And then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and tell them, after you enter the land that I am giving you as a home, and you present an offering made by fire to the Lord from the herd of the flock to produce a pleasing aroma to the Lord, either a burnt offering or a sacrifice for a special vow or free will offering or appointed feast. Then the one presenting his offering to the Lord shall also present a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with 1/4 hin of olive oil, with the burnt offering or sacrifice of each lamb. You are to prepare 1/4 hin of wine as a drink offering. With a ram you are to prepare a grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin of olive oil and 1/3 of a hin of wine as a drink offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And when you prepare a young bull as a burnt offering, or sacrifice to fulfill a vow, or as a peace offering to the Lord, present with the bull a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with 1/2 hin of olive oil. Also present 1/2 a hin of wine as a drink offering. It is an offering made by fire, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. This is to be done for each bull, ram, lamb, or goat. This is how you must prepare each one, no matter how many. Everyone who is native born shall prepare these things in this way when he presents an offering made by fire, as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. As for the generations to come, if a foreigner residing with you, or someone else among you, wants to prepare an offering made by fire as a pleasing aroma to the Lord, he is to do exactly as you do. The assembly is to have the same statute for both you and the foreign resident. It is a permanent statute for the generations to come. You and the foreigner shall be the same before the Lord. The same law and the same ordinance will apply to both you and the foreigner residing with you. And then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and tell them, when you enter the land to which I am bringing you, and you eat the food of the land, you shall lift up an offering to the Lord. From the first of your dough, you are to lift up a cake as a contribution. Offer it just like an offering from the threshing floor throughout your generations. You are to give the Lord an offering from the first of your dough. So again, this chapter is one of those, just breaks up the rhythm of the chapter. It breaks up the narrative of the defeat of Israel, right? Because we go from a serious defeat here. They were told that you're going to walk into this land and it's going to just be smooth as butter. And then they go and they doubt. And then God gets mad at them and says, no, you can't have it now. And so they're ordered to go back. And they're like, you know what? We're just going to go. We're going to go and walk out in faith, despite the fact that the leaders are telling us no. We're going to walk out in faith. And then they get their ass handed to them. That's interesting, right? Because God could have gave it to them. They could have started walking into the land and the people fled in terror, just like they were promised. But that is not what happens. These people instead come and defeat them. Right? They come to the defense of their land and they repel the invading horde. Because that's what this is. If you don't look at this as God chose these people, what is happening here is they are invading someone else's land. They are going and saying, I'll really like that. I'm going to go take it. And they're coming from generations of coveting this land. Like generations of wanting someone else's land. Like your kinfolk's land. Because they all descended from Shem, right? That's where they came from. All the Canaanites and all the Amalekites and all the people that live here in this land, they all came from Shem. Right? Ham went to South Africa, and Japheth supposedly went either north or east, depending on who you talk to. And so all of these people are descended from the same people, and you are coveting your relatives' lands. You're not going out and finding your own. I mean, the world is unexplored. You're going specifically for this one place. Now, I believe that they're going specifically for this one place because the entity that they are serving has been jealous for this one place the entire time. We talked about those entities before, not in specifics because we can't really get into specifics, but now we're going to get into the offerings for unintentional sins. So this is if you don't know what you're doing. Now, if you stray unintentionally and do not obey all these commandments that the Lord has spoken to Moses, all that the Lord has commanded you through Moses from the day the Lord gave them and continuing through the generations to come. And if it was done unintentionally without the knowledge of the congregation, then the whole congregation is to prepare one young bull as a burnt offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord, with its grain offering and a drink offering according to the regulation, and one male goat as a sin offering. And the priest is to make atonement for the whole congregation of Israel, so that they may be forgiven. For the sin was unintentional. And they have brought to the Lord an offering made by fire and a sin offering, presented before the Lord for their unintentional sin. And then the whole congregation of Israel, and the foreigners residing among them, will be forgiven, since it happened to all the people unintentionally. Also, if one person sins unintentionally, he is to present a year-old female goat as a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the person who erred by sinning unintentionally. And when the atonement has been made for him, he will be forgiven. You have the same law for the one who acts in error, whether he is a native-born Israelite or a foreigner residing among you. But the person who sins defiantly, whether a native or a foreigner, blasphemes the Lord. That person shall be cut off from among his people. He shall certainly be cut off, because he has despised the word of the Lord and broken his commandment, and his guilt remains on him. Oh boy, the damnation that was brought upon for no reason. Right? They're about to go wander in the desert, and all they had to do for this unintentional sin of questioning whether or not they could conquer in the name of God was to make an offering. Take a young bull and offer it as a burnt offering, a pleasing aroma, and one goat. Make sure you throw a goat in there. And then your sin's forgiven. Your sin of unintentionally questioning the Lord in whether or not you can conquer this land. If you offer a bull and a goat, it's gravy, baby. All you've got to do now is walk into this land. I mean, if you were playing by the rules wrote down in this book, but they don't play by the rules wrote down in this book. They're kind of a little wishy-washy on a lot of them. You can unintentionally kill somebody, and there is a redemption for you. You can unintentionally appropriate somebody else's materials, and there is redemption for you. But if you intentionally gather wood to heat yourself or to cook your food on the wrong day, then we need to hit you in the head with rocks until you die. I know it just sounds kind of capricious, but it's whatever. Like, while the Israelites were in the wilderness, a man was found gathering wood on the Sabbath day. And those who found the man gathering wood brought him to Moses and Aaron and the whole congregation. And because it had not been declared what should be done to him, they placed him in custody. And the Lord said to Moses, "This man must surely be put to death. The whole congregation is to stone him outside the camp." And so the whole congregation took the man outside the camp and stoned him to death. Well, why not just play by the rules that you laid out right above this? Like within like lines of the same text, and cut him loose. You're no longer a member of our congregation. Make your own way. No, we can't have that. We can't play by that rule. This was the Sabbath. And so, because it was the Sabbath, his blood must be spilled. His blood must fill the ground, because it was the Sabbath day upon which he gathered wood. Now, he might have been doing it commercially, right? He may have been gathering wood for somebody else. He may have been gathering wood for himself. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he wasn't trying to do it and get caught. So he's probably not doing it professionally. But that is speculation. But instead of turning him loose, and right, he's despised the word and has broken the commandment, and his guilt remains on him, but he shall certainly be cut off. He shall be cut off from among his people. And by cut off, they mean hit him in the head with rocks until he is no longer here. Seems a little bit excessive to me. Doesn't seem like a kind, just, forgiving God. And you can judge me for that. I am willing to stand before God. While he judges me for that, I am fully aware that I will face judgment for every single word that proceeds out of my mouth. So, all right, we are not going to get into 16. We will save that for next time. Let's talk about Egypt, because I missed the reference, but it said that the land, the city of Hebron, where the Anak live, is 7 years older than the place in Egypt. Now, the place in Egypt and the city of Hebron and the city of Babylon, which is over here, these were very old cities. They were founded by some very old people. People that weren't necessarily from here. We are firmly into the land of speculation. So let's speculate for a few minutes. There is a myth, a story, that comes from Sumer, which is this area right here, about the Annunaki and the various battles that these people who came fallen from the sky and mingled with the peoples, right? Or created the peoples, depending on the story translation that you get. I'm building a game based off of this very loosely, so I'm learning this lore as we go along, but they came down and they were harvesting gold in this area, and they needed a workforce, and so they created the Adamu, which was the people, and they weren't able to reproduce on their own, but there was several of these Annunaki who came down, and they were not necessarily in accord with each other into how things should proceed here. There was several disagreements, and part of what happened was that they separated themselves into different areas. They had different Adamu for different things, but they separated themselves and they created this servant class to mine the gold and to take care of the day-to-day necessities of their life so that they would have a life of relative ease, something they were more accustomed to from where they came from, instead of being required to work as hard as they were to harvest the gold to send elsewhere. Now, they established Babylon, they established Hebron, they established the city that I can't remember the name of, where there are some pyramids. There are a lot of ancient cities, not all in this area. Like, you have cities over on this part of the globe, and you have cities down in this part of the globe, and even there were cities in this part of the globe where these very large peoples were, and they were able to commingle with the peoples that lived there, and they produced genetic deformities. They created giants and beast men, and maybe some people with just one eye in the middle of their head, and maybe some people that looked like a cow, because they were playing with genetic manipulation, according to the stories, right? And some of these Anunnaki genetically modified people to the point where they could reproduce. And they were supposed to all die in the flood that happened. But Zarathustra was told by one of these people that the flood was coming, and he was instructed on how to build an ark. And him and his sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, went into this ark and thereby saved humanity and the various species. That was here. The Noah story is remarkably similar, and it's more in this area. But the reason I bring it up is because we are dealing with the first real sign that this was historically a thing. This is wild speculation because everybody, almost everybody, it's never everybody when I say everybody, but almost everybody who spends any amount of time in this book and presumes to speak upon the things in this book will tell you all kinds of things that what this means. They will tell you that some of them will tell you that yes, it's the giants, but they won't go as far as to say it was the angels. They won't go as far as to say that the people who came down were the Anunnaki. And the Nephilim were the descendants of the Anak who mingled with men. Right? They weren't a class of angels, right? They were a class of beings who were significantly larger than us. Now the Nephilim, for the most part, appears to be mostly humanoid, but there are beast hybrids involved. Some of the Nephilim include a bull-headed man and an eagle-headed man. These are legends. They are stories from deep, deep, deep antiquity. But the tablets that came from Sumer over here, they are significantly older than the stories that we are deep diving into here. They are significantly older, like an order of magnitude older. They are the stories that this story is built upon. They are the stories that are accumulated into the Old Testament and adapted into the Genesis story and the story of this chosen people. I don't believe that anybody was chosen. I believe that there were a multitude of peoples saved across the globe. I don't believe that the same actor saved all the peoples. I don't believe that they were all saved in the same manner. Some peoples were led underground into caves that were specifically designed to airlock and to keep them supplied with fresh air while the flood happened. And some people were brought up on top of a mountaintop that somehow survived it. And some people were put into a boat. I don't have a problem believing that all of these things could be true because I don't know for sure. I know for sure, for pretty sure, that what we have been told is not necessarily correct. I have tried earnestly to show my reasoning for that as we go along. We will be getting more into these peoples as we go along because there is more significant conflicts coming, right? We will get into the actual conquest of the land and the different groups who were there and why they were specified to eliminate some groups and not others. Why they were told not to go into agreement with some and it was okay with others. We will talk about all of that as we pass through. For the most part, what we have seen so far, especially today and yesterday, is that God is capricious. The God that they are dealing with is very quick to anger. He is surprised often. He doesn't understand humanity. I can't say I know, right? But the story that comes from Sumer, and we will deal with that in another place, but the story that's on these Sumerian tablets is that one side wanted humanity gone, and one side didn't. And the side that didn't was the side that gave humanity the ability to breed, to have knowledge, and to have Pandora's box opened up for them. If y'all ever wondered what the mad jug on my board is, I told my daughter to come in here and write Pandora's box so that I would remember to include that in something, and she wrote mad jug instead. So that's what that means up there. It's because one side of this, and not necessarily the side that is considered the good side in the story, gives people knowledge. And knowledge is what we got from the tree in the Garden of Eden. It is what separated us from the merely created being into the cognizant being who is now accountable for sin, who now knows to hide his nakedness. This is the foundation of that. This is the beginning of the telling of the history of that. It does not get into deep detail because they didn't want it. This was establishing Israel. This was establishing for Israel a new something. I don't agree with all of the rules, but I do agree that it was a good thing. What they was bringing themselves up out of from the surroundings was a good thing. They separated themselves because they held beliefs at all that were moral and just. Now, I don't personally believe that if somebody is gathering wood, they should ever have their brains beaten out. I don't believe that. I don't believe that God is okay with it. Not the God who told Cain, "You're forever cursed for striking your brother with a rock and killing him." It's literally the same action that humanity became cursed from. If you take it past the getting of knowledge, right? The one in the garden who wanted to restrict you from the knowledge in the Sumerian books is the one that wanted to erase you. And so there are severe things here that are very much different, in my estimation, from what we have been taught about them. This is a very complicated topic, and hopefully I haven't brought too much confusion. We will be getting deeply into this, right? There is a lot here that doesn't get talked about. I am not going to be able to cover all of it. I may be wrong about large parts of it. I hold that option in my mind. I do believe that I am giving good and correct, true information. God has confirmed to me that I am giving good, correct, and true information. But that does not mean that me as a mortal am going to get it right all the time. What I can tell you is that God only ever wanted you. He only ever wanted your willing service to him, to love him and your neighbor, and that's it. And so If you want a relationship with God and you don't know how to get something, say something like this. Say, Dear Heavenly Father, I come to you as a sinner and I ask you for forgiveness. I freely accept the grace that you freely extend, and I ask you to come into my life and to change me to be something that you would be proud of, to achieve my full potential in your plans for me. And if you said anything remotely resembling that, it is done. But you have to mean it. Like, you really have to want to change. And if you want to change, He will absolutely change you. And He will make things better in your life. He will bless you when you walk His path. He's not necessarily punishing you when you don't. He's just not giving you the blessings that keep the enemy away. He has that ability, right? He could punish us for our iniquities every single day, but He doesn't. He wants us to choose Him. He doesn't want you to get beaten in the head with a rock because you were picking up sticks. That's not God. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. God loves you. This has been Pit Steak. Peace.